Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be looking at Resto Druid talents for Dragonflight expansion. This is a relatively old news type of thing, but there has been a lot of information about talent trees in Dragonflight. We'll be using a Wowhead talent builder, which is going to showcase a better overview of what to expect in the next expansion, because there's going to be combinations that you never had before. There's going to be a class tree, there's going to be a spec tree. How many points do you need in order to unlock the ladder points and things like that? There is a lot of information to digest, and a lot of people have been asking me what combinations I find interesting. How do you feel about Resto Druid in the next expansion? And guys, this is going to answer all of that. Let's go and get started. As you can see here, you have two talent trees in Dragonflight. So you have your class tree, which has a lot of different options. You have your spec tree. So you have 31 points in class tree, you have 30 points in spec tree. And depending on what spec you already have, you're going to have certain points already added in your class tree. And you can see here I have Rejuvenation and Swiftman straight away. Now, you can see the lines here. You need to unlock, or you need to put in 8 points in here and here to unlock the next section. Certain kind of nodes, they can only be unlocked if you max out the previous node, and the best example is Stonebark. You need to put in 2 points into Stonebark in order to unlock Memory of Mother Tree or Invigorate, which feels like a big debate kind of thing. So we'll talk about that, but first of all, we're gonna go into the class tree. Now keep in mind, this is not going to showcase talents that are going to be the best. I'm assuming everything here works similar to what it's like in Shadowlands. I'm assuming a lot of the abilities are working the same way, and there's a lot of kind of choice. Before I'm gonna step into the talent tree and talk about the choices that I make and the little combinations you can have, how does this differ from Shadowlands live talent tree? If you're playing Shadowlands right now, you'll notice you have this kind of basic talent tree where you have one choice per row. You can only have one choice, and you have to make sure you pick the right one based on a situation. Maybe I need mass entanglement. Maybe, for example, the biggest choice you can do right now is Resto Druid in rare situations. Inner Peace. Do I need 2-minute Trank, or can I use Spring Blossoms if people are stacked up? So these are the kind of choices you make right now in Shadowlands, but in the new Dragonflight talent system, you'll be able to have combinations like Inner Peace and Spring Blossoms. Combinations like Soul of the Forest and Tree of Life. Maybe even Cultivation as well. So all of a sudden, these lines right here, they're being removed in Dragonflight, and you'll be able to have a lot more combinations that you never were able to have. So going back to the tree, again, there's going to be a lot of different options for Mythic Plus. Straight away, you see Skull Bash. This is most likely going to be picked up by any Mythic Plus Resto Druid that is pushing high-end Mythic Plus content. If Interrupt is going to be added to every single healer, this is going to be a big significant buff to a lot of healers, because they're going to be interrupting. This is going to be somewhat of a significant utility nerf to Resto Shamans, because they used to have a monopoly on Interrupt, and that's probably going away in Dragonflight, so we'll see if Blizzard is going to compensate for that. So straight away, Skull Bash, anyone who's doing Mythic Plus is going to pick that. If you're not doing Mythic Plus, if you're doing raiding, you're probably going to ignore that. You probably want to pick something else. There are certain talents that you feel like are mandatory in the class tree. We're talking about the class tree first. So you have increased healing and healing taken. This feels like a pretty good talent choice to pick up straight away. You'll see Wild Growth, you'll see Innervate, you'll see Improved Rejuvenation, where increases duration, rejuvenation duration is increased by 2 seconds. These feel pretty significant to pick up straight away. You might even look at increased healing and magic damage. Healing and magic damage dealt is increased by a certain percentage. Some of these talent nodes feel pretty hard to pass up, regardless whether you're doing Mythic Plus content or raid content, but you might actually have to pass them up in order to get additional utility. Things like Fur, which I kind of looked at. When you shift into form you haven't been for 20 seconds, abilities cost no rage, energy, astral power, or mana for 4 seconds. I'm not looking at the power of this, but I'm looking at what it does. It gives you an advantage, or gives you a specific reason to shift in and out of forms, which is really, really prevalent in things like Mythic Plus content, where, let's say you're Resto Druid, you're doing Mythic Plus, and you're like, no one needs healing, and then all of a sudden you shift into your kitty form, you're about to deal damage, but then someone takes massive amount of damage and they need healing, and all of a sudden you shift out of your form and you start healing them. You feel you have been cheated out of that GCD. And this way, with Fur, it might make it feel a little bit better. I'm not looking at the power of this, I'm looking at the intention. Intention is pretty cool. So let's say, for example, you're going to go Mythic Plus route, and you're going to pick up Rake, you're going to pick up Trash, you're going to pick up Rip, Swipe. Maim, it's very awkward to use. Let's say you pick up increased armor and physical damage, and then you're going to pick up Frenzy Regeneration, and then you can get Skull Bash. So now you have decent amount of survivability, you have an Interrupt, and you have your Feral Affinity DPS options. Pretty cool. And then you unlock Wild Charge or Tiger Stash. Most of the time it'll be Wild Charge, because it's very, very, very popular. You're probably going to pick up Soothe as well, because a lot of people, again, you kind of want Soothe. And then I kind of missed this, but you want to pick up Remove Corruption because you want to be able to dispel curses and poisons, and that's probably going to be relevant in... This is more for Mythic Plus, but this is probably going to be relevant in Raid as well. You're gonna pick up increased healing and magic damage. Like, these kind of nodes, they're very passive, but it also feels bad if you don't take them. You're probably gonna pick up increased healing and healing taken. These are like pretty mandatory. If you're doing Mythic Plus, you're absolutely going to pick up Sunfire and improve Sunfire. Like, this is without a doubt something that you absolutely need. You'll pick up Wild Growth, you'll pick up improved Rejuvenation. And then you can actually make a choice between Mass Entanglement and also Vortex. I think a lot of people will pick up Vortex because Vortex has a lot more... It really depends on the type of content you're doing. Innervate is pretty important because later on we'll look at improved Innervate. And then you're going to pick up Nature's Vigil, which I actually wanted to talk about a little bit, because for 20 seconds all single target healing and damage spells and abilities also heal a nearby friendly target based on the amount done. 20% for heals, 40% for damage spells. So it feels like damaging spells are gonna have an increased effect. 1.5 minute cooldown. So every 1.5 minutes you are going to feel like a Discipline Priest, because all of a sudden your DPS abilities are going to heal people, which when combined with something like Convoke, which is probably gonna have a 2-minute cooldown, we'll talk about this, could be a really interesting combination both in Mythic Plus and Raids, because you know, if you've been playing a healer in the last couple of expansions, you know that healers don't only heal. They provide utility and they have to provide damage when they can. So this feels like a pretty interesting talent to pick into. Again, I'm not gonna talk about too much about it, but again, Stampeding Roar is something... You can go this row, try and pick up Heart the Wild, which I feel is pretty interesting, or you can try and go and pick up Fur, which something that is also... I feel there could be a lot of interesting choices here, because Well-Honed Instincts is pretty nice defensive, or it's a pretty passive. If you're doing raid content, I feel you could also go into Astral Influence, which is going to increase the range of all your abilities, because there is a lot of raid content out there where people are really spread, and extra range is not something to be dismissive of, and then you can actually pick up Typhoon. So there's a lot of choices in the class tree. You can go this route, pick up the extra range, you can pick up Typhoon, you can try and pick up Nature's Vigil, you can try and pick up Heart the Wild, or you can go completely the left side and get Fur and try to pick up Heart the Wild as well, because you still have quite a few points left. So let's say, for example, if I do want to pick up Heart the Wild, I'll pick up Stampeding Roar, which Stampeding Roar you're going to pick up in raid no matter what. You kind of have to have it. I really like Vigor, talent for defensives, both in Mythic Plus and raids. For 4 seconds after shifting into bear form, your health and armor is increased. I think this is a really... It's a mandatory talent for Mythic Plus, because if there's going to be certain, how do I say, dungeon abilities where everyone's going to take a massive amount of damage, shifting into bear form is really strong. So at least I feel like a couple of points in that. Lakara's Teaching is something that I also thought was really cool, both for raids and Mythic Plus, because you gain a certain amount of stats based on the current form. So no form is haste, and you're most likely going to be staying in no form, healing. And you have to remember, the worst part of the new expansion is the lack of stats. You're not going to have a lot of haste as Resto Druid when you go into Dragonflight, so I feel like any amount of stats that you can get is going to be really wanted, because I'll be completely honest with you guys, Resto Druid with low amount of haste feels really bad to play. And this is one of the things that I really hate about new expansions, the low amount of stats. So you can pick up the stats, you can pick up Renewal or Improve Stampeding Roar, and again, I'll take a point away from Vigor and I go into Heart the Wild. So you can pick up Heart the Wild, you can pick up Nature's Vigil. You can go the left side and try Fur if you want with Well-Honed Instincts, which I feel is also interesting. So there's a lot of different things that you can do in the class tree, and you have to make sacrifices. That's the most important thing. You have to make sacrifices. But I do feel things like increased healing and healing taken, of course Wild Growth, Rejuvenation, Innervate, Lakara's Teaching can be actually really cool. I feel like these are pretty much, maybe not mandatory, but they feel really bad to miss out. You do not have to take Innervate in Mythic Plus content. I don't think you need Innervate in Mythic Plus, but I definitely feel like you're going to need Innervate in Raid. So let's go to the Spec or Restoration tree. Life Bloom, you're going to have to pick up at least 8 points at the start, and that means you almost have to pick up everything. Improved Life Bloom, again, this is pretty cool because Life Bloom can also be synergized with what I'll talk about later on, Dark Titan's Lesson. Improved Wild Growth, no-brainer. A lot of your healing, at least right now, is coming from Wild Growths and things like that, so you need to pick up. Omen Clarity, at least 1 point. I think it's important because it just gives you that free regrowth when you need it. Nature Swiftness, at least 1 point, because Nature Swiftness is still that oh crap moment, both in Mythic Plus and raid situations. And we'll have to see if Nature Swiftness is going to work with Convoke if you do pick up Convoke. Because for the people who don't know, you can activate Nature Swiftness without using an ability. You don't use your regrowth or anything like that. You just activate Nature Swiftness and press Convoke, and the regrowths from your Convoke are going to be buffed by Nature Swiftness. We'll have to see if that bug or feature is still going to be relevant. If it is, you're absolutely going to be picking Nature Swiftness. Improved wild growth, you're gonna pick up Ironbark no matter what. Whether you're doing Mythic Plus content or raid content, you need that defensive. Now, the improved Ironbark, I would not go improved Ironbark or Stonebark in raid content because I don't think they're worth the points. In Mythic Plus, you can absolutely look into improved Ironbark to reduce the cooldown. You could probably look into Stonebark, possibly. But in raid content, I would not go for it. I would actually go with something like improved Regrowth. Regrowth's initial heal has increased chance for critical effect if the target is already affected by Regrowth. So, how do I say it? It's making your one direct heal Regrowth a little bit stronger. And then you can go into the next part because you already have 10 points in here. You only need 8 points to unlock it. So you can technically pick Ironbark. You don't actually have to pick improved Regrowth. And you can go into Tranquility. So we'll talk about improved Regrowth because you need 20 points to unlock the further sections. And you're going to look for these talents here as well. So Tranquility, absolutely no-brainer. Unstoppable Growth, absolutely no-brainer. Wild Growth is one of the biggest or best abilities you can have, both in Raid and Mythic Plus. Soul the Forest feels really nice to pick up here because you can have Inner Peace and Soul the Forest at the same time, and I think having Inner Peace is going to be interesting because all of a sudden you're going to have a 2-minute Tranquility, and that's going to be. And you also can have Spring Blossoms, so Inner Peace, Spring Blossoms. That feels pretty cool. So right now I'm going to pick Tranquility. I'm going to pick up Ysera's Gift at least 1 point. Very passive healing. I'm going to pick up 2 points into Inner Peace. And I'm going to pick up Abundance. So the reason I'm picking Abundance here because if you max out your Regrowth, it's going to feel a lot better to cast Regrowths when you feel your Rejuvenations are going to go into Overhealing. So for the time being, this is going to be like a Raid setup. In Mythic Plus, I probably go Scenario Ward. In Raid, I'll probably go Abundance. And how many points? We have 16 points available right now. We can probably pick up, like I said, if we're picking Abundance, I would like to pick Improved Regrowth as well. And we're maxing out these 2 points. And then you can go, and this is something that I've been thinking. Nourish, I'm not a huge fan of Nourish. I don't think Resto Druids need an additional single target ability. I don't think it's something that is mandatory. Maybe it's going to be insanely good and insanely overpowered. Maybe the scaling is going to be weird. But outside of that, I don't think it's worth it. I think it's just much better to pick up Regrowth and just improve your Regrowth with different talent choices, and all of a sudden Regrowth is going to be part of your real toolkit with improved Regrowth, with Abundance, instead of just having another average single target healing ability. I think Resto Druid having one single target healing ability is more than good enough. I think you can really make a point for improved Tranquility and Wild Growth. I'm not 100% certain on this. Increases healing done by Tranquility and Wild Growth based on the current health of the target. Lowest health targets are healed for more. I don't have the numbers for this. This is literally Resto Shaman Mastery, but only for 2 abilities. And it can either be very good or it can be absolutely terrible. So it's something that I need to know more about how much extra healing you're getting. So you can notice here that I cannot pick Cultivation unless I have 2 points in Ysera's Gift. So you're forced to go double Ysera's Gift and then pick Cultivation. You cannot go the other way around. Even though I have Abundance, I cannot go and pick Cultivation if I don't have double Ysera. So let's say we pick double Ysera and we pick Cultivation, and we're expecting a fight where everyone's going to be below 60% HP. All of a sudden you're going to get more Mastery, because when the Rejuvenation heals a target below 60% health, it applies Cultivation to the target, and that's an additional hot that works with Mastery. So the more Mastery you have, the more hot you have, the more Resto Druid you feel, because Resto Druid is all about applying those hots. Again, I did go into Cultivation, but I feel like you you're making some real choices here. You kind of really want to go into Improved Tranquility and Wild Growth because you really want to pick up Spring Blossoms. I do think Spring Blossoms is really important. I think it's a really good talent to pick up because Spring Blossoms, again, additional hot, additional master and things like that. Then you can actually go Germination. A lot of people either hate it or love this talent because if you pick Germination, you can spend a lot of your time applying Rejuvenations on targets because you can apply 2, and with low amount of haste, it can feel really weird. But we'll pick Germination for the time being. You can pick Rampart Growth. For the people who remember Rampart Growth and Growth Tending, these used to be like the go-to talents for Mythic Plus content because all of a sudden Growth heals for more over its duration and its healing over time effect applied to the target of your life bloom. So you can put Life Bloom on your tank and then regrowth other members of your party, and your tank is getting more healing, and that feels really, really cool. With the same sense, the growth ending, Swiftman heals a target for an additional amount over 9 seconds. And this is basically a hot that's being applied when you use Swiftman, then it stacks with Mastery, or you actually did. And you had a combo with these two talents that would provide you with a significant amount of healing in Mythic Plus content. It's not something that was... It could have been used in raids and stuff like that, but I felt it was more suited for Mythic Plus. So right now, you have to pick Autumn Leaves, because even though Autumn Leaves' secondary effect is absolutely a meme, the main thing is that rejuvenation duration is increased by 1 second. You also have improved rejuvenation, which also increases duration here. And the secondary part, it heals for an additional amount when it's your only heal over time on the target. The secondary option is honestly something that I hated, because it goes against everything the Resto Druid has been taught. You have your mastery and you're applying as many hots on people as possible, and your heal is doing more heal. And Autumn Leaves comes in and says like, hey, you only need one effect and you're going to do more healing. You can almost ignore that. We'll see how powerful it's going to be. There were times when Autumn Leaves was so powerful that you would try to keep just one hot on people, which I absolutely hated. But generally speaking, the first part, the increases your rejuvenation, is going to be more than big enough to make this talent a pretty obvious choice. And then you're going to have Incarnation, Tree of Life, or Convoke the Spirits. Now, Convoke the Spirits here is, I'm assuming, is going to be 2 minutes. I'm going to pick Convoke for the time being, but I actually think that it's actually it's pretty hard choice between the two. I think a lot of people do end up picking Tree of Life because they like the fact that it's going to provide you with mana reduction. And Resto Druid, especially in raids, has a lot of mana issues. And Incarnation Tree of Life is not only used as a throughput cooldown, but also used as a mana reduction cooldown, because it reduces the cost of your rejuvenation, which is one of your main spells. So I feel like on longer fights where you feel like you're really struggling with mana, a lot of people might go with improved Tree of Life. I like Convoke because it's one of the abilities that actually gives you a choice of dealing damage. So I feel like in Mythic Plus, a lot of the choices here are going to be based on, if you're doing Mythic Plus, you're picking something that provides you with DPS. If you're doing raids, you're probably going to go with something that provides more healing throughput or mana efficiency. So right now I pick Convoke, I have Autumn Leaves, I have Germination, which means I'm going to have 2 hots or 2 rejuvenations. And then you can have a choice between Photosynthesis and Dark Titan's Lesson. Now, Dark Titan's Lesson, you might apply 2 life blooms to the target. This might be relevant for fights where there's going to be consistent tank healing needed, and you might not have a paladin with beacons, because Resto Druid can actually provide a lot of single target healing if they maintain their hots, if there has scenario ward or things like that. And just think about this, the amount of hots you could provide with things like cultivation, you might have scenario ward, you might have double life bloom, you'll have spring blossoms. Like, the amount of hots and the amount of healings you could provide on a single target would actually be insane. But I think Photosynthesis is something that a lot of people are going to be picking, because you can combine Photosynthesis with Flourish, and that is going to be something insane. Outside of that, you also have Adaptive Swarm, which is a Necrolord ability, and you also have Circle Life of Death. I would never ever pick Circle Life of Death in raid situations. This is purely only for Mythic Plus. You will never pick Circle Life of Death in raid situations unless it's going to be significantly changed. You stay away from this, but this is for raid, so I might pick Adaptive Swarm, because Adaptive Swarm is... I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be worth in raid situations. In raid, we'll have to see how it goes, but I'll just pick Adaptive Swarm for the time being. Then we're going to go into Growth Ending. Now, this is something that a lot of people are going to probably talk about, and the fact that I didn't take Stonebark, again, I'm not saying this is going to be the best talent choice, but I feel really limited by the fact that you need to pick, like for example, I'll take away a point. You need to pick double Stonebark in order to get Memory of Mother Tree, and I think Memory of Mother Tree is actually a really cool option, because Wild Growth has a 40% chance to cause your next rejuvenations or regrowth to apply to 3 additional allies. And this feels pretty cool, because the more rejuvenations you can get with Germination, with Memory of Mother Tree, and combine it with Vision of Ending Growth, could actually be some real significant amount of... You could have a lot of rejuves out, and you can have a lot of synergy here. But having to pick 2 points into Stonebark when points are somewhat scarce feels really bad just to pick up one of these. So I don't go into Stonebark. Again, Stonebark and Mythic Plus could actually be used in raid. I probably would never put in 2 points into here. We'll go with Growth Ending because it'll make us Swiftman a little bit stronger. We'll absolutely pick up Innervate because improved Innervate. If you cast Innervate on somebody else, you gain its effect at 50% effectiveness. I never ever liked this aspect of Resto Druid where you're forced almost to give away your Innervate and actually be punished for that personally. I never enjoyed that. I never enjoyed the fact that a lot of times in raids, things like Power Infusion are a thing, because all of a sudden we spend more time in raids discussing who's gonna get power infusion and actually arguing about that. So I'm not a huge fan of these abilities right now because I think it actually causes more issues than it solves. But it really depends on type of content you're doing and type of environment you're in. But I never really liked that. But the passive effect here, Blizzard kind of noticed that, and they were like, okay, passive mana regeneration is increased 5%. So you don't have to give away your innovate. You're still gonna get something out of it. But if you do want to do that, you can. And then I definitely always go with Flourish, man. I feel Flourish is such an awesome talent to have. It is, again, the synergy that you could find with Flourish and things like photosynthesis could be absolutely insane, in my opinion. I think it could be really, really interesting to have. And then I only have one point where I can put in Vision of Ending Growth. Vision of Ending Growth could actually be really, really strong in raid environments. I absolutely would consider picking Vision of Ending Growth for raid. But for Mythic Plus, it's an absolute no-go. I would never pick this. And then you have your Foresight bonus, which I thought about this, and the Foresight bonus could actually be really, really cool. But the fact is that you also have improved Incarnation and Convoke. So this is when you pick Convoke. So shifting out an Incarnation before it expires ends the effect and refunds portion of its cooldown. So that's cool if you're into Tree of Life and then you swap out of it. Convoke the Spirits has an increased chance to use an exceptional spell and ability. I'm not reading anything about the cooldown for Convoke, so I'm assuming Convoke is going to be 2 minutes. I'm assuming this because it feels like you're getting the Convoke legendary effect without the cooldown reduction on it. So I'm not 100% sure. If you had a 1 minute Convoke, the Foresight bonus would be insane because you could definitely align your Foresight bonus, shift into Tree of Life, and then Convoke, and that would feel very much like right now. But because Convoke would be 2 minutes, I'm not 100% sure on the Foresight bonus yet. It could be interesting, could be like something to consider. I'm not sure if I would pick this in Mythic Plus. I don't think it's that good in Mythic Plus. I don't think this is good in Mythic Plus. I think this would be interesting in Mythic Plus and Raids. So I probably would go in Improved Incarnation and Convoke because this would work for Raids and Mythic Plus. And I probably would pick this for Raid situations if I would purely do Raids. Again, keep in mind, guys, there's a lot of different things you could go and change. Like, in Mythic Plus situations, I would not take this. I would probably take Circle Life and Death. I would think about taking Improved Incarnation. I might take away, I don't know, maybe... I don't even know what I would take away in this point, but I would really like to get Improved Convoke because Convoke and Adaptive Swarm are going to add damage. And it's very important in Mythic Plus content to add damage as a healer. And I think things like Circle Life and Death, they do feel good in Mythic Plus content. They just make you... You're going to be very GCD starved. You're always going to be casting something because your abilities end faster. Your HOTS, your dots end faster. So you need to click, 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 click all the time. But that's not a bad thing. You should always be casting abilities. This is field crafting, guys. This has been an insanely long video. I've talked through the talent points. This is field crafting. We don't have the real numbers. We don't have the exact numbers. I'm assuming that these spells work similar to how they work right now. But there is a lot of things to be excited about. I honestly think the amount of combinations you can have, like photosynthesis with Flourish, feels really, really cool. Maybe you're doing just Mythic Plus content and you want to pick up Verdant Infusion just for single target healing. I don't think you would do that because I genuinely think you have a lot of single target healing as Resto Druid, especially if you go into Scenario Ward, if you go into Termination, if you go into Cultivation, if people drop low, all of a sudden you're proccing HOTS, and you're just doing a lot of healing. I think Resto Druid has a pretty balanced choices here. There's some really... The only thing that I said, Stonebark, feels bad having to pick Stonebark in order to pick Memory of Mother Tree. That's the only thing that I can say out of this. But the fact that you can have 2 minute Tranquility, the fact that you can have Soul the Forest, you can have Cultivation, you can probably have Spring Blossoms if you want. You can stack Mastery, Mastery, Mastery. You can have Convoke, you can have Photosynthesis. You can have Flourish at the same time. That feels insane. That really, really does feel insane. And there is some significant choices here to be made for Mythic Plus. Like, I didn't even talk about the class tree that much because I think the class tree could have a lot of options in terms of fur, in terms of how do you synergize Nature's Vigil, 1.5 minute cooldown, maybe combine that with Convoke, maybe have Improved Convoke to make it stronger, and all of a sudden, how does Convoke spells interact with Nature's Vigil? Like, do they work? Because that could be pretty insane to have this 2 minute burst that's also going to add a lot of DPS. Like, this is something, because maybe you would go with Convoke, and in Mythic Plus you'll try to pick up Balance Affinity, and all of a sudden you're going to go into Moonkin form, Convoke, hope for Full Moon, and then go back into your Feral Affinity and start dealing damage with things like Adaptive Swarm. Or like buffing your dots and bleeds with Adaptive Swarm. There's a lot of things to consider here when it comes to Mythic Plus, when it comes to damage, when it comes to pure healing, or if you're doing a raid situation and you want increased range, maybe you want to pick Astral Influence. Honestly, there's going to be a lot of loadouts. This video was extremely long. I don't want to bore you too much. I missed out on a bunch of things here. There's a lot of synergies here that you can add and fix. Let me know which combination you're most excited about. And I apologize for the longer video, but let me know what combination you think is going to be really strong for Mythic Plus. Or maybe you found out some kind of a DPS combo that could be really, really cool and you want to share it. Let me know in the comments. I'm going to read all of them and I'll see you in my next video.